Hello, welcome back. We're going to jump right in, continuing our analysis of Esoteric Psychology Volume 1 by Alice A. Bailey and testing the premises of Alice A. Bailey. Now we're going to look at the birth chart and how that correlates to the 7 rays. The 1 is reflected through the prism or the Trinity, and that allows it to be reflected out onto the surface level appearances. What appears to be solid and firm is that we are all these separate, divided, different shades of being, but in the beginning there was the one source. From that, moving into the 3, the Trinity, the Father, the Son, the Mother, and then from there into the 7, and then broken down into as many different parts as you can imagine. We all have all of these traits within us, and that's the point. When we look into astrology, we understand that the level to which each of these are amped up or kind of muted is in a very structured and set way initially based on our birth chart. What I'd like to do is show a rapid fire succession of the different images that give you a picture of what makes up the birth chart. So as a little bit of a preview for that, this image here is what a birth chart looks like. If this looks overwhelming at the start, it's because it should. This is esoteric information. It is not mainstream. But when you look at this, what you're really seeing is this, and this, and this, and this. These are all the same thing, is what I aim to share. Okay, so to start that rapid fire, this is where we're essentially going. This is a blank chart, one that's available. This is something I'm going to link in the description. I've decided against linking every single thing in the description because, one, teach a man to fish, right? As a blank birth chart resource, really helpful because this is how you're going to plug in your specific information and be able to look at where your starting point is. The birth chart to me and the natal chart, which is synonymous, is a starting point. It's the blueprint of the soul, but it is not a confining structure. It is not a label that we give ourselves like we do in this world when we go ahead and assign a person any of these traits. Right? It's not some kind of stagnant thing that we have no control over. It is definitely something that we stand under until we understand it, because it's your foundation of how you're influenced. Just like the 7 rays influence these 7 attributes and create these 7 types of people, you are going to be one of those 7 types of people until you basically unlock that. So the point for learning a birth chart or a natal chart for me is to unlock the blueprint and to then move around more freely. That's that self-actualized person, is you have the freedom to move between the realm with more of your own freedom because you understand yourself and you understand others. You understand how things work once you master the first 3 primary aspect energies of divinity, of creation, because these are the 3 things that created all things: the will, the love and wisdom, the intelligent activity to execute a plan, to bring forth and demonstrate into physical being that which was first willed into being or thought of, by mixing it with the feeling and all of this stuff. This gets really heavy into a lot of esoteric teachings and work that you can look at a separate time. But again, to study for this, that being where we're going, what fills in this pie chart? What are these things? This is the first thing that we're looking at, the circle and these 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the houses in astrology. And there's lots of ways that this is depicted. Here's one that is semi-like beginners or basics. It doesn't have all the extras on there, and this can get super intricate, as you'll see. People shove in all the aspects or different traits. Then they add layers to it that show you what else corresponds with the houses in terms of the different elements, the different zodiac signs and the different planets that are influencing all of this. So this is how it can get pretty intricate. This is again another chart depiction that you'll see with the houses. Make sure I have these big enough. But we're going to move through these, spending a little time on each, showing all the many ways that this information is shared out there. And this is a chart, a clean version that I look at for people that are maybe in the Virgo space as well, who like to see things in this linear, clean fashion, but it's all the same as this. Another way to look at it. This. So there's so much that can be done with this, and again what we're doing is getting to a place where we can understand when we plug in our date of birth, place of birth, time of birth into one of these free systems that can give us our birth chart, that we can understand what this means unique to us and have that head start, that first big push towards demystifying our life experience, which for me is very exciting and why I started looking into this stuff. So that's the journey. And looking at this one here to start. So in astrology, we have Western astrology, I should say, just to start as a preface. There's also different astrological systems. I would never recommend that anyone stop at just one system. Basically, tropical, which is the Western astrology, where you see the 12 zodiac signs in a chart laid out like this in a circle. The point of looking at the sidereal Eastern astrology is to gain a lot more of their wisdom and their teachings, because there's different systems, Chinese astrology as well, that have so much wisdom compacted into those. So it's just like free knowledge everywhere and abounding. So I would definitely recommend looking at more than this. But this is a good basic in this basis, and this is where we're starting today. And we'll already give you a wealth of information to start with if you do just start here. So looking at the 12 houses, you see you have a circle split up into these 12 sections, and they go counterclockwise around. Each of these houses represents a different area of life, from the first house representing or addressing the self and the appearance, to a house that represents home and self-care and family, up to sex, intimacy, finances, inheritances, all kinds of things, travel, career, friendships, social awareness, humanitarianism, and karma, old age, afterlife, subconscious, all of these things. So there's so much packed in here, but each of these sections of the pie represent a different aspect of life. And the fascinating thing when you also look at this chart is that this is how it's broken down in another way. So here we have 1 through 12. My image is probably blocking this right now, but you have 1 through 12 of the zodiac signs, and over here on this side, this gives us the houses in that same way, breaking down those keywords of what each of those houses means and what area of life they rule over, if you will. You also see something here, body part. You say, oh, it goes from the head to the feet. And each of these houses, each of these signs rule over parts of the body in very interesting ways that you can get into with astrology, down to different people's physical appearance and all that. And you ask yourself, how could that be? And what are you talking about? That's when I love to look at this chart specifically, because it shows something that is so fascinating when you look at what is the fetal position, or what position we are in when we are in the womb, right? When we're being baked and being cooked and being prepared for this life experience. You see how the position, this is like a full-grown person, but it is definitely depicting something that is a deeper meaning of what we're looking at here, is that while you're in the womb cooking for that 9 months, see the position of the head here, Aries, and position of the feet, Pisces, and all the way around. This is a little bit of how each of these areas rules over a different aspect of the body and rules over, a part of us, and how that also correlates to this chart. And that kind of study is truly, truly fascinating. So that's just a quick sneak peek at that little piece of this. And looking at this chart, as another example, it's the same thing as the previous. It's depicting the 12 houses going counterclockwise, 1 through 12. It's always this way, but this one is again telling us all the different parts of life that the house touches on or represents or influences. These kinds of images and depictions can become like cheat sheets once you get your birth chart information and you're ready to plug in your blank chart here and fill in which house you have certain signs and energies in, which we'll get to as well. So then you find out like, oh, I have Saturn in my second house. Now, what is my second house about? My second house is about values, my money, my tastes, material possessions, income, financial principles, how I tend to use and spend and attract money and investments, and my self-esteem, self-worth, financial security, all of these things. And so I'm going to want to take a closer look at Saturn and what that is, and all of these things that a house can show you. These houses in astrology are all going to be big indicators or big storytellers of all the things that make up you. So another way to look at this when we get more intricate, so once you've mastered those 1 through 12 and you understand what those 12 houses represent, then you can see that each of those houses is assigned to one of the zodiac signs. Always again with Aries starting at the first house. Aries is the sign of the first house, moving all the way through Pisces, also counterclockwise. And then the wheel is split where there's 4 different elements within each. So this first house, Aries, shows fire there. Then you go into earth, then air, water, and then it repeats. Fire, earth, air, water, fire, earth, air, water. So you have these patterns as well that these energies sit upon. And you'll look at that. We'll look at that a little bit later too. I know that I'm going to have to do another video on this because I'm going to have to leave in a second for an appointment. I got behind on time. But this is just to show the different levels of depth that we can get to once we zoom out into what we're looking at in terms of an astrological chart. So again, first we sit with those houses to see the different parts of life. And then we zoom out and we see the different zodiac signs, and each of these 12 zodiac signs represent a constellation in the sky that again is a snapshot when you're born of where each of those constellations and planets are where you were born specifically, to say what energy is beaming down upon you at the time when you were born, after your gestation period, after you're cooking, your little egg is cooking in the lab and you're getting ready to be birthed out. There's a certain astrological snapshot of the sky, and that's what a birth chart gives us. And that gives us, interestingly, very detailed and descriptive attributes and traits and qualities that we learn from that moment in time when you were born. And it's different for each of us. So moving out further in this outer ring here, and it says which planet rules each sign and each house. So right here we have Venus ruling Taurus in the second house. That comes into play in some more interesting ways that we'll look at. Another depiction, this one's a cleaner version. So this is showing us still those keywords of the houses, what they represent. These symbols represent the 12 signs of the zodiac, moving again through Aries, through Pisces. And then what they have in here are those elements that we were talking about, and how that is a triplicity here. It repeats 3 times through the different 4 quadrants of the circle, the zodiac wheel. And then on the outside, this one is telling us that now we're learning about fixed, mutable, and cardinal energies. And this becomes important because just as you're learning at the traits of the different elements, what does it mean to be a fire sign? What does it mean to be an earth sign, an air sign, a water sign? There's different traits and attributes that are connected to those elements. Fire signs being more energetic, being more direct, being more dynamic. And this is again testing the premises. Does it link back to the 7 rays? The dynamic ray is influencing the psychological will function of dynamic types of people. And what do we see when we're looking at The Aries is they're adventurous and energetic, pioneering and courageous, enthusiastic and confident, dynamic and quick-witted. So what we're doing is we're still breaking this down from the 1 to the 3 to the 7 to the many. And this is another way that we are doing it, using this information that we also learn from astrology, which is what element is my sign? What kind of energy is that sign? Is it fixed? Not all signs are fixed energy. We have one earth sign, the Taurus, is fixed, but also Leo is a fixed sign, Scorpio, and Aquarius. One of each element is fixed. The fixed earth sign is Taurus. The fixed fire sign is Leo. The fixed water sign is Scorpio. And the fixed air sign is Aquarius. The difference in a high level between someone who is cardinal versus someone who is fixed would be that energy that tells us when a person's really good at starting something or birthing an idea and getting right to work on it, versus someone who takes a long time to get started, but once they're started, they stay dedicated and they stay the course. And then you have, in between, you have these mutable signs that aren't really particularly good at either end of those spectrums, but they're really good at helping to think outside the box, to change course really quickly, or to be a bridge and be amenable between the two, and to kind of just be the helper between those two energies to guide them towards harmony. So this is another example that's commonly seen in terms of actually the business world and thinking about entrepreneurial endeavors and the different type of people that you want on a team to launch a project. You don't want to have all cardinal energy that's just really getting, dynamic and starting and having all these ideas, but nothing to ground it and land it and bring it into fruition. And you don't want to have a team that's all fixed, that's always like, oh, I think I would want to do this and I want to do this, but no one has like the impetus to get started. Or once they're going and they're so dedicated, they're stuck in their ways and they're not thinking about changing. You might want to bring in some mutable energy that can help them get out of that rut and change things up and be a little quicker in like turbulent times, because some people want to double down and stick with what they know, but the times may call for innovation and movement forward, and we need each other in those different ways to help us to see outside of our frame of reference. And the zodiac and astrology tells us again why people have these certain traits and tendencies. It's not just a bucket of randomness that we can't have clues and insights into. It definitely is coming from somewhere, and studying these kinds of things helps us to get there. A few other charts, again, I showed before one of these, that one of the important things here is it tells us that the actual top half of the chart or the wheel is also going to be dealing with the public and social life, where these first 6 houses deal with the personal and the private life. So there's interesting things to glean from that as well. And again, we have the clean version that is something that I'd like to use as we look into pulling up our own birth chart or analyzing some on this amazing astro website that I use a lot. There's a database that has all kinds of birth charts and all kinds of interesting information. It's astro.com. It has a data bank of birth charts, and so we can kind of play around with this and study it in a different way, and also plug in ultimately on our blank chart here so that we can see more of this, like how does this all come together and what else is there to learn from this. Interesting things to take it a step further in this bottom corner is to understand that the different elements and the different signs have masculine or feminine energy behind them, and so it's important to calculate up on your chart what's the total of masculine influences versus feminine influences, and total that up in each element, and you can see a little bit more about a person in terms of your or another person's energy. Are they balanced? Are they heavily in their masculine energy, or are they heavily influenced by feminine energy, which is going to be intuitive, emotional, those kinds of things, water sign energies, not traditional like gender role things that we're talking about. But from this lens, it's also super, super helpful to understand your starting point. Again, the blueprint for your soul. That's why I am the way I am. But then you can unlock that, and then you can maneuver into the realm of the self-actualized. So that's the goal. That's always the goal. And for this video, I don't really love that I didn't get to go into more depth. I spent a good amount of time kind of trying to weave the story of the 7 rays chart and how that breaks down into those many different personality traits and aspects, and then how from there we use that to understand that this mirrors into astrology, and how to understand astrology is going to take a little bit more of a deep dive and a little bit more time with each of those different sections that I just gave at a high level. So one of the things that happens a lot of times when I look into astrology or I see astrology videos is that people are trying to share how much they know, and they go really fast and they go really deep into a lot of heavy stuff, and sometimes you just need to take it back and slow it down and break it down into smaller parts. So I'd like to do it that way, and we'll do that as we continue through this series. I'll see you in another video. Take care.
One rabbit.